the urgency of now because the economic tsunami of 2008 is still washing up on our shores. In 2008, an economic and financial tsunami swept into America, and nearly 2.5 million people lost their jobs in a matter of 30 days. Not because they had done something wrong. They lost them because of an unjust system that rewarded companies like Enron and others that took advantage of their customers. In a wave of unemployment and underemployment, there were nearly 15 million people who ultimately lost their jobs. Some say 25 million. People lost their jobs because the Bush administration turned its back on regulations that ensure the security and safety of the American financial system. Corporate CEOs and bankers were allowed to use their companies like their own personal piggy banks. It's no surprise that President Donald Trump wants to surround himself with billionaires, because if he surrounds himself with billionaires, he doesn't have to think about the common people. Tens of millions of Americans lost their retirement savings, were forced out of their homes, and have been dragged down into the cesspool of despair. And for millions of Americans, the nightmare continues. And I know that there's some of us who lost most of our retirement, and some of that money has never come back. The devastation is even worse among African Americans and Hispanic. The unemployment rate among African American teens is nearly 47% and higher in some communities. Where do we go from here? What is the urgency of this hour? It is this, that we must no longer look to the government to do what it refuses to do. The average American has virtually no voice in Washington, no voice in Richmond. Our government is bought and paid for by the special interest groups, by powerful lobbyists and the wealthiest Americans and foreigners. What must we do? We must demand that justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. We must begin to resurrect that spirit of protest by rising up to create our own economic opportunities. Churches and community organizations and other nonprofits must band together and work together to address the challenges of our communities. You know, when the government gives you a handout, the government can take back what it handed out. Am I right about it? We know that programs don't always bring about real solution. We must begin to resurrect the spirit of righteous indignation against ignorance that is ripping the hopes and dreams of our children to shreds. We must begin to resurrect that sense of community and determinism that declares that we will not be defeated by brokenness. We will not have our dreams deferred by a callous political system. We will not tolerate our children coming out of school and they cannot read or write a complete sentence. We will not tolerate our sons being convicted for simple possession. We will not tolerate meager opportunities where we continue to be the last hired and the first fired, and in some cases we don't even get an interview. Just as Amos faced the urgency of now, so do we face the urgency of now. But let justice well up as water and righteousness come down as an ever-flowing stream.